Ba-dum-bum, ba-dum-bum. Good evening. Says I'm going live. Am I going live? As always, if you can hear me, please say that you can hear me. If you can see me, please say that you can see me. None of the above, then say that. I'm just going to turn my phone off because it keeps vibrating. Hello, I'm Poppy Webber. I'm here today because the one on Friday, my camera battery decided to self-combust and turn off, and my microphone wasn't turned off, and so I swore. Really sorry about that. So let me know if you can hear me, if you can't hear me, if you can see me. So if you can see me, pop it. I think Lisa Robertson, thank you very much, my lovely. Can see and hear you, Poppy. In that case, I shall crack on with, so basically I did a live video on Friday evening, as always, on the last Friday of every month, and it was a bit of a free-for-all, ask me anything kind of thing, and I had loads of really good questions, and we got most of the way through answering them, and then my camera battery decided to die. So I thought I'd come back on and just finish the last of the questions, and any extras mop them up tonight instead. So let me have a quick look at what we went through. So if you're interested in what we talked about last time, they're still available on both my Facebook page, Poppy Webber Qualified Saddle Fitter, Pee Wee Saddlery Facebook page, and also on my YouTube thing. If you want to find live videos on YouTube, they're in a slightly different place than normal videos, so under live videos. So have a click on there. And in last week's one, we spoke about, on Friday's one, we spoke about half pads, knee and thigh blocks. Are they a good thing? Is there such a thing as being too big? Some more about half pads. We spoke about whether a poorly fitting saddle could cause stumbling and tripping in the front legs. We talked about stirrup bars being too far forward and can they be lengthened. So they're the main things that we spoke about on Friday. So we've got some more ones coming in now. So I'll run through the ones that we have had coming in since then, and then we will see if you've got anything. In the meantime, pop your question in the little question and comments box, and I'll answer it as I go. So let's go to the question that came through from Jacqueline Potts. Oopsie, deleted it. Do you recommend the Scharf girth? I think you mean the Scharf. I can't even pronounce it. Scharf, SCHARF. Freedom girth. Do we all know what they are? So as with any type of girth or saddle or bridle or saddlecloth or half pad or anything, I can't say yes, I recommend them, because it really, really, really depends on the horse, whether the horse likes them, whether the horse needs them, what kind of saddle you've got, what kind of horse you've got, what kind of discipline you do, what kind of riding you do. But if anyone's interested, let me see if I can share my screen here. Oh, I think I can. Can you all see this screen? So this here is the girth we're talking about. The Scharf freedom girth. So it's got like it's basically articulated. It's an articulated girth. So here we can see the jumping girth, the eventing girth, dressage girth, etc., etc. So on all backwards on the screen, so that way around. So we can see they're kind of like quite unique looking girths, aren't they? So they're designed really to sort of articulate. So between like the lumps, there's like an articulation. So for example, let's look at this dressage girth. When we look at the dressage girth, it's got like that plate that sits here on the sternum, and then it's got those little articulating bits there that sort of move. And in theory, they're designed to sort of move as a horse moves, because we all know that as a horse moves, its ribs move. As it bends, its rib bends. So these are designed for, I would say, to distribute the weight pressure really nicely across the sternum, and also to articulate as the horse moves. Do I recommend them? I see them work really well on some horses. I see other horses not make any difference whatsoever. So it's the same with everything, really. The idea is there. They're very modern. The thing I do like about them, because there's a few other similar looking girths on the market, the thing that is nice about these is if you look really closely, you can see all the bits that touch the horse are really well padded, because some of them have a really nice padded bit on the sternum and then just plain straps going up the side, whereas these are really well padded on everything. They seem to be on at least almost all of the area that touches the horse. So for that reason, yeah, they're probably quite a nice girth for some horses, but not necessarily for all. if you're thinking of investing that much money on a girth, then number one, always do it in conjunction with your saddle fitter. Obviously, I'm such a bore. And also see if you can get one on trial, because there are a lot of money to spend if it's not going to be brilliant. I think my theory on it is, if you're spending, for example, £200 on something, you want to see £200 worth of difference in your horse. So yes, in some cases, people say these are amazing and they really change their horse. Not just these, but other, these kind of like really unique girths. Other people say it makes no difference at all. Same with bridles and things for etc. Oh, and I'm back. Next question. Jodie Roberts. Does the position of adjustable knee blocks affect the position, i.e. is there a better place to put them for jumping in a GP versus flat work? Yes, I think so. I think for starters, for jumping, your leg is going to be at more of an angle than it is for flat work. So if your leg's at this angle, you want your knee block to sit above your thigh here at the same angle as your leg sits, because when you're jumping, you want to stop your leg from coming up. So if your legs are at this angle for jumping, your knee block should be at the same angle. So you can move those upright knee blocks back to meet your leg. And then for flat work, obviously they're going to be longer. Some people prefer them, instead of them putting like above their thigh, some people sort of prefer them in front of their knee a little bit for flat work. I personally prefer them on top of my thigh. I think it makes me a bit more stable, a bit less likely to come up out of the saddle. But yes, the adjustable blocks on Velcro, well, not just Velcro, some of them are screwy ones that you can screw and unscrew. But yes, they make a big difference because it's to do with stirrup length and what you want them for. In the jumping position with your short stirrups, you want your knee block here. So like that stride before the fence where you sit, or a couple of strides before the fence, you sit down, you lock your knees in, and then your horse goes to take off. That there is where you want your block. Yeah, does that make sense? I hope so. Alana Catherine, my horse really needs to build top line. How long should I wait before fitting her for something custom? How do you know when their top line is somewhat stable? Such a bore, I know. Ask your saddle fitter, obviously. So talk with your saddle fitter. Some horses we are really good at predicting. Like we can look at a horse and think, well, we know what that's going to look like when it's got a bit of top line, and we can fit a saddle accordingly, and we can, maybe use a pad or flocking or something, or an adjustable gullet or something like that. And then we can change it as and when they develop. So I'm not always adverse to fitting a custom-made saddle to a horse who is lacking in top line, as long as you can make a really well-educated guess about how it's going to change. Other times you have no idea. You look at a horse, you think, oh, that horse is going to be really chunky, or maybe it's not. Oh, is it? It's going to have a high wall. You don't really know. Some horses never really build the top line up because their top line is missing for a physical reason. So in that sort of a case, it really is about talking with your saddle fitter, discussing whether a pad system would be a good idea, or whether an adjustable saddle would be a good idea, or whether like a variety of cheap but second-hand, but good quality, well-fitting saddles over the next sort of 6 to 12 months is a good idea. It's very hard to say. A horse's top line is never really stable, because you could get it built up beautifully and having the most amazing top line you've ever seen, and then it'll go and get an abscess in its foot and it will drop all of its top line. It's just the way it is. It's never really a stable thing. But because saddles are so expensive, and custom-made saddles even more so, you really want to make sure you're fitting it at the right time in the horse's development. So yeah, have a chat with your saddle fitter. I'm sure they will be able to help. Ruth Thomas, can you advise on a non-elastic girth? Every elastic one I try makes saddle slip sideways with my slab-sided Connie. I have a Connie. I feel your pain. Connemara's are all, you've probably all heard me say it before, they are my worst horses to saddle fit for sure, and I'm sure a lot of saddle fitters. They're quite awkward. They do really make the saddles move around to do the shape of their ribs. So number one, if your saddle is just going one way, make sure you haven't got a one-sided elastic girth. So if you imagine this is a girth underneath your horse, and you've got elastic on this side, and you haven't got elastic on this side, so you've got some boing, boing stretch on this side, but no stretch on that side. If you imagine when you lean that way, your saddle's going to go because it's going to stretch, but when you lean that way, your saddle's going to go and it's not going to have any stretch. So if you've got elastic on your girth, you must always have it both sides or in the middle. Some of them come with elastic on the sternum now instead of on the sides, but don't ever have it on just one side. And if you do, swap it around all the time, because when you've got it on one side, your saddle can go one way much more easily than it can go the other way. So if your saddle is slipping one way and you have one-sided elastic girth, then as a temporary fix, you can try swapping the elastic round, which side it's on, until you can get yourself either a double-sided elastic girth or a no elastic girth. Now, elastic on girth is something that saddle fitters don't argue about, but not everyone agrees on. So I am quite an advocate for elasticated girths, but not the cheap elastic and not the very stretchy elastic. I like short elastic, strong elastic that's got a little bit of boing to it, but not like a boing. So like you want to, not a boing. Does that make sense? So because I think of girths as like bras. They're not belts. A lot of people refer to them as like being like a belt, but they're not, because they don't go around your waist. They don't go around the horse's waist. They go around the horse's rib cage. And the horse, you're expecting, again, to bend and to move and to flex its ribs and to be able to breathe in and breathe out and just, have some kind of movement through its ribs. And I think if you've got some elastic in that can really help, and it can help with that mobility and it can help with their movement. But too much elastic just creates movement. So in an ideal world, you'd have like a triple layer of elastic, or at least double layer of very, very good, strong and not too long elastic. It's the cheap elastic girth. So the elastic, in fact, not even cheap. I saw a post the other day of a very expensive girth that the elastic had stretched from like this to like this. And that is not good. If your elastic stretches that much, don't have it. Short, strong elastic. If you do really want to try a non-elasticated girth, then there are some that are quite good. So think about it. If you're putting something around the horse's rib cage and you're taking the elastic out, you still want there to be some maybe not breathability, but some kind of something within the girth. So I think sometimes like the Steuben string girths can be really good for that. And they can be really good for the horses whose saddles move because they're really broad. Do you remember how them from the olden days? And they're even better now than they were in the olden days. But they're really broad. They basically look like several dozen pieces of string all put together in a girth, but they're really wide. And because there's so many different bits of string, they sort of mold in nicely and they have a little bit of movement in there. So that's a good idea to try if you want to try a non-elasticated one. But again, talk to your saddle fitter because they're the person that knows you and your horse best. Although they might not answer the phone to you if you've got Connemara, because they're our worst. So any other questions? Oh, yes, coming up. Got lots of I can see you, I can hear you. Question about adjustable saddles. Can you over tighten the screws, and could a bent screw cause any issues with fit? I think you can over tighten the screw. So she's talking about the adjustable saddles. So for example, it's one with the gullet bars in the front, and they have a little bar in the front, and it's got a couple of screws. Most of them have got that you screw in and tighten. And I tell everyone all the time to check their screws because they do loosen sometimes. And sometimes I go for saddle fitting and the person's hanging off one way and their saddle's going, and it's because their screw has come out of their bar. So check your bars all the time. Because you don't want them to come loose. But Marina here is talking about the opposite problem. Can you over tighten the screws? Well, the problem with over tightening the screws is that people like me can't undo them. So I go to sometimes that have had them very tightly screwed up, and I really struggle to get them undone. The only time I've ever not managed to get one undone was when they've really rusted up, and actually the saddle was a bit too old anyway. But on the whole, I'm pretty strong. But there is a problem with screwing them up, and that is because they can't be undone. So it doesn't affect the saddle fit if the screw is too tight, but it does affect the ability to be able to fit it in the future. Could a bent screw cause any issues with fit? Well, I guess a bent screw wouldn't be sitting maybe in quite so flush, in which case it could be moving the bar very slightly, in which case it could affect the fit. One of the main problems with the bent screws or damaged screws is that they get like a bit cross-threaded and you can't get them all the way in. So if the bent screw isn't screwing all the way in, then yes, that could cause a problem with fit, because especially if it's at the bottom, so if there's a screw here on, so let's say this is the thing, the gullet bar, if there's a screw there and a screw there, if this screw at the bottom comes loose, you can have quite a lot of movement in the bar. So if it's not come loose, but it's not screwed up properly because it's bent, then that could cause a bit of that happening. And once that happens, it causes movement through the points of the saddle, that front bit at the front, and that can cause some problem. So yeah, if you think you've got a bent screw, speak to your saddle fitter. Thank you, Poppy. Sorry about the spelling faux pas. That's all right. That's about the girth. That's fine. Don't worry about it. I can't pronounce it. You can't spell it. I can't pronounce it. If anyone knows how to pronounce it, sharf, which I think sounds a bit like a rude word, personally. Catherine Foster, hello. Here's one. How would you start with backing a horse saddle-wise? A cheaper second-hand one, not cheap. Can this be fitted without a rider on board? Oh, love this question, Lisa Robertson. Yes. I say to everybody that one of the most important saddles that you fit to your horse is its very first saddle, the one that we use for backing. And it makes me literally want to pull my own eyeballs out and eat them when I see people on Facebook selling like the most ugly, old, broken, god-awful, lumpy, horrible saddles, and then they describe them as backing saddles. Because do we really want to introduce our horse into the world of ridden work with a broken saddle or an ill-fitting saddle? However, I then confuse people by telling them you must always ride for your saddle fittings, and people think, well, I can't ride when the horse isn't backed. But that is the kind of exception. So I do go to, well, also horses coming back from injuries, an exception. But on the whole, so I go to people, so I say to people, if you're backing your horse, get a saddle fitted to it for backing. And then as soon as somebody is on board, so I tend to say when the horse is kind of like riding away. So when it's sort of starting, it's probably been sat on a handful of times, maybe starting a bit of trot work, because that's helpful for us to see trot work. I insist that they have me come back. And in fact, the way that I do it is that I charge them only for the first fitting, and I include that second, the ridden part of the fitting, for free, because I really want to make sure that people do it. Not everyone does that. Everyone's their own business person. I'm not very good at business. That's why I do that. But I do that because I really want to make sure that people have that checks as well when it's ridden. Because as I've said before, when we see something statically on a horse, it might look like it fits fine. As soon as a rider's on board, it fits a bit differently. But we can give a really good educated guess about whether a saddle is going to fit a horse for enough full backing for you to do a little bit of walk, maybe a few strides of trot, and then we can come back out and then fit it properly. And then sometimes you then have to have it fitted every couple of months because the horse is growing until it's a little bit older, and then you can go for your normal 6 monthly checks. Now, in terms of what saddle you get, obviously get something that fits, but like, it doesn't really matter if it's for backing. It doesn't matter if it's a bit tatty. It doesn't matter if the colour's a bit discoloured. It doesn't matter if it's not the most comfortable saddle under your bottom. What matters is, it doesn't even matter if it's the wrong colour. What matters is that it fits the horse and it's comfortable on the horse. So a good quality second-hand saddle is absolutely fine. And like, speak with your saddle fitter, because some might be willing to do like an exchange thing where, you know, they'll sell you a saddle that fits for the first couple of months, and then they'll take it back in and, you know, give you most of your money back in exchange for the next one. So you're not always massively out of pocket. These are all things that are worth speaking to your saddle fitter before you get them out, so you can find out what their processes are. But definitely get a saddle fitted to a horse. There's loads of really good adjustable saddles now. People sometimes buy them for the young unbacked horses, thinking that they're going to fit them forever. They don't always fit them forever. It's a really good marketing ploy, but they can be really good for this situation where they start off a little bit scrawny, and then they start to put on some muscle, and they start to change shape a little bit, and then the adjustable saddles can be really good for that. And they can sometimes last forever and ever and ever. So I hope that helps, and good luck if you're backing a horse currently. What saddle do you recommend for wide, low, withered cob? My current saddle is restricting his shoulders. Again, can't recommend it without seeing the horse. There are so many different cob saddles. Now, the difference between a cob saddle and a non-cob saddle, people often think it's to do with how wide they go, but it's not. It's to do with that flatness and that sort of straightness of the tree, because most cobs are wide, yes, but they also tend to be quite low withered. They also tend to be quite flat backed, like this is head, this is tail. They're quite flat back this way, but then they're also quite flat backed this way. You know, like when you look at them from behind, their back isn't like usually like the spine poking up. They're usually quite flat that way as well. That is obviously a complete generalization. Not all cobs are like that, but that's what the majority of cobs tend to be like. and also the more native ponies. And so they tend to go better in the obviously flatter treed, lower headed. So the head's like the pommel bit. So if you look at the saddle side on, it's got this like sticky up bit where the wither's going to go, and then this big shape, a deep seat and lots of shape in the tree, then the chances are that probably won't fit a flat withered, flat backed cob. But again, you can't really decide what saddle to recommend. I personally, on the very wide, very flat cob types, absolutely love the Ideal H&C wide seat saddles for the really wide cobs. I don't know if yours is really wide or really low with it, but they can be brilliant. So it's definitely worth asking your saddle fitter to bring some out and like take photos of it, because if it is really flat backed and really wide, it might need a specialist saddle. So get some photos sent to the saddle fitter first before you get them to come out with some saddles. Samantha Geen, Habia said yes to a saddle. Whoop whoop, happy days. She's someone with a little cob as well. How that happens. Samantha, I'm very happy for you and your husband. Give me a message. Oh, hang on. My saddle has developed a squeak. Seems to be coming from the right front, possibly stirrup bar. Is it completely broken? Thank you for teaching us all so much. Oh, no problemo. It depends. So is your saddle, Sharon, is your saddle an adjustable saddle with an adjustable gullet bar in the front? Because as we were just saying a minute ago, sometimes when you lose your little screw in your bar, so say you've lost your right front one, that can go. If it is your stirrup bar, you should be able to feel it. So lift up the little, what's called a skirt, lift up your skirt, and then get hold of your stirrup bar and give it a really good, strong wiggle. There should be no movement whatsoever in your stirrup bar. So pull it out, in, out, and also up, down, up, down. A stirrup bar should have no movement in it whatsoever or no squeak in it. So if it does squeak, like a metal or wood squeak, don't worry about leather squeak, then there's a problem. If your saddle has developed a squeak, so like it hasn't always squeaked like with your boots or something like that, then 100% don't ride in it. Get a saddle fitter to check it, or even take it to like a saddlery, like a shop, somewhere that does leather work, saddlery stuff, and they'll be able to check it for you and check your tree for you, because you don't want to be putting on your horse if there is a chance of having a broken tree, because it does so much damage. Equally, if it's a little, if you have got an adjustable one with a gullet bar in the front, then check that they're tight as well. But you can do that yourself. Oh, this is like the world's hardest question to answer. Hi, Tori. Tori Upton Gillings. She's a young eventer with a horse called Moley. How do you know what length mono stirrup leathers to go for compared to normal leathers? Oh, you don't, because every company that makes the mono leathers has their own way of doing it. They have their own way of measuring it. They have their own random way of doing it. And so you just don't know. Best thing to do is just like choose what company you're going for and then message them personally and say, I have 54-inch stirrup leathers on my saddle. What length mono ones do I need? Because some of them have like lengths. Some of them measure the length when it's like halfway through. Some of them measure the full length, but it doesn't matter what that is because it depends where the holes are. Some of them just give them size 0, size 1, size 2, some size small, some medium. Minefield. Literally hardest question ever. Ellen Betts, what kind of CPD do you do? Loads. I love CPD. By the way, if anyone's looking and they're wondering what's on my arm, I've hyperextended I have hypermobility in my elbow, and I've hyperextended it. I bent it all the way back the wrong way, and it really hurts. So I've got this funny tape on it. Not sure if it's working. Anyway, what kind of CPD do you do? I do lots of CPD, partly because I'm a bit of a geek and I love learning, and partly because I have to as part of my qualification. We have to do a certain number of hours and days every year. So officially CPD wise, I do lots of courses with, have you heard of Horses Inside Out? Bear with. So the lady that does this stuff, you see that? So she's called Gillian Higgins. If you've ever want a book or anything, Pilates and stretching, she does oh, I don't know where my other books are. She does loads of really good like biomechanics, Pilates, stretching. She does brilliant courses, and she also does brilliant like online courses. Over lockdown, I've just gone cray with her courses. So Gillian Higgins, it's Horses Inside Out. Can you see that? Horsesinsideout.com. So I would a bazillion percent recommend them, because she doesn't just do them for people like me, she does them for like horse owners as well. So if you're in any way interested in biomechanics or learning about how your horse is put together, or what's bone structure, what's muscles, or she even does, I think, like horse owners massage courses, then 100% do them. She's fantastic. What else we do? So we have there's also Centaur Biomechanics. They do lots of biomechanics stuff as well, so do some of their courses. I've just done a bridle fitting course. I've done bridle making. I go to Ideal Factory quite regularly and help with like repair work there. I just do loads because I love it and I love learning. And anyone that's slightly interested in horses, please definitely always recommend Gillian. She's really down to earth and she's really good at talking. And she does brilliant days. Brilliant. And she paints the horses, and then she does like slow motion video of them, like, you know, like landing after a jump, and you can see like how much their fetlocks move. Oh, it's just incredible. Lisa Robinson, I have old awful ones that wouldn't go on my young mare. They are hopefully going to Poland to train saddlers. Lisa is, I presume, the lady that said about backing a horse. Yes, she is. Yes, that's a brilliant idea to do with your old saddles, because when we go and learn about saddlery and about how to like reflock saddles and things, we have to take old saddles with us. I think we have to have like 8 saddles to reflock as part of our training. So that's a really good idea, using your old saddles for that. Brilliant. Yeah, get your saddle fitter out, Lisa, and see what they say. Oh, another good question. You're full of it today, guys. Are there certain times of the year that are best to have a saddle fit checked, assuming workload is roughly the same year round? I'm thinking in terms of gaining, losing weight with the seasons. Yes, so it does kind of, I mean, you've said like assuming workload is roughly the same year round, but I'm just going to make a quick exception. So some horses that are hunted in the winter go very lean over the winter because they're very fit. In that case, I would recommend slightly more regular saddle fits before beginning of winter, middle of winter, end of winter for them. But on the whole, it's difficult. You can't really say, yeah, everyone should get the saddle checked in May and in November, because saddle fitters won't be able to fit you in, because my diary is full January to January. No, not really. I think some horses, go up a size or 2 in the summer. Other horses don't. If you know that your horse does really expand during the summer, then it's definitely worth getting your saddle fitter at the beginning of the summer, and then maybe like discussing it through the summer with them, because I have horses that I know that I go to at the beginning of the summer, and I know that they always go to, for example, extra wide by the middle of the summer, and sometimes we can fit them with that expansion in mind. Just chat with your saddle fitter, because they're the person that knows. But no, there's not really a best time. It does depend on the discipline. Some horses really hold their weight brilliantly throughout the year. Other horses really drop it in the winter. Other horses drop it in the summer because they're doing more work, blah, blah. Caroline Gill, fab question about the backing. It's a very good question, wasn't it? Oh, God, I keep losing where I am. Hi there. I have a K2 jump saddle on a Cobb Cross Warmblood. He works really well in the saddle and showing no signs of pain along the back, etc. But it's 4 finger space at the front. Doesn't feel tight on his shoulders, and from behind the saddle has spinal clearance. Hi, Sherry. So, number one, I think you're probably worrying because you're thinking 4 fingers clearance is too much at the front, because we all think that you should have 3 fingers clearance. Well, number one, 3 fingers clearance is so old school that we've moved on from that now. That went out with like Crocs. I'm saying that because my husband's watching and he wears Crocs, and I want him to throw them away. So yeah, 3 fingers went out with Crocs. So don't panic about how many fingers there is, because it really isn't that relevant. What's important is that the saddle doesn't make contact with the horse's spinous processes at any point during movement. So whether it's when they are jumping, trotting, standing still, there mustn't be any contact with spinous processes. So some horses have, you can fit fairly snug to, other horses have a little bit more room. Now, some horses, for example, the cobs or the flat withered kind of warm bloods, sometimes don't have a great deal of wither. And in that case, sometimes when the saddle has got a bit of a shape to it, it ends up looking a little bit too roomy at the front. Like you think, oh, blimey, I could put my packed lunch in there. You don't want too much room in there because it would imply that the tree isn't the right shape for the horse. But equally, it doesn't matter if you've got a little bit of space in there, as long as the tree is the right shape for the horse and it's making contact everywhere else. I would get a saddle fitter just to check it and confirm it. But you're saying your horse works really well in the saddle, showing no signs of pain along the back, doesn't feel tight, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be too concerned by a 4 fingers gap. I'd be less concerned by that than by a no fingers gap. So yeah. Izzy Brown. Hi, Poppy. Can't stay to watch live, so I'll catch the replay. Hi, on the replay. I just wondered if you have any thoughts, good or bad, about Monaco Saddles, GP/Cobb. I'm on the hunt for something for my awkward connie. So can you see the theme here? Awkward connies. They're so awkward. Monaco Saddles. So Monaco are made by GFS, who some people also know as Jeffrey Fieldhouse. So they're a brand of saddles that have been around for a bazillion years. They used to be the more traditional type. They're now a little bit more modern. So the Monaco Saddles are like the Thoroughgoods, not the Thoroughgoods because they're leather. The Monarchs are like the Kenton Masters, Bates, etc., etc. They're a leather saddle. They're on a plastic /polycarbonate tree. Well, I think they call themselves something else, but they're very flexible. They've got a gullet bar in the front that you can change. They have synthetic flocking in the paddles as standard, and panels as standard, which can be a little bit bouncy. So some horses find it really bouncy. Some horses love it. They do a cob version. The older ones weren't necessarily great for cobs. The newer ones maybe a little bit better. I think it depends on budget, really. They're okay. They're adjustable. Riders tend to find them really comfortable. One of the reasons being because they've got quite a lot of flex. So if you like to pull the seat towards you, they've got quite a lot of flex in them. So I think riders find them quite comfortable. But for that reason, some horses maybe find they've got a little bit too much movement in them, and combine that with a very soft flocking, can find that a bit bouncy. Other horses absolutely love them. Again, up to you and the horse. On that note, have you found success with anything particular for Connemara? Couldn't believe it when I saw you say recently they're the hardest to fit. I'm not saying on behalf of every saddle fitter, but I do think probably most of us would agree that connies are the worst. It's because their ribs, so it's to do with the angle of their ribs. They're really high set at the back, and the ribs tend to have a slope to them. Plus, they tend to have a big barrel, ribs, and then itty bitty shoulders. So everything on connies makes the saddle want to land on their ears. And then to pop into that, connies have got that power behind, jumping over jumps. They literally make the rider want to just sit on their ears. They're pole. They need like pole-free pressure saddles. Yes, there's loads of saddles that fit connies. I often find the close contact jump types will fit a connie. You'll often see, like in the dealers' yards where someone sells a lot of Irish types and a lot of Connemara's, they'll have them in the close contact jump saddles. And that's because they're a flat close contact tree. And that's the problem with connies, is they lift everything up, they make it perch, they make it wobble, and then everything's got too much shape in the tree. So a nice flat close contact tree often fit the connies. We are in the process of, partly because I've just bought a connie myself for my daughter, we have just designed a Connemara saddle. So watch this space. But yeah, on the whole, flat treed. Sometimes you find like the Kenton Masters cobs go on connies okay, actually. And then going back to that thing about the 4 fingers, so sometimes you'll put a Kenton Masters cob on a connie and think, oh, it looks a little bit high. But because some connies just have no withers, but they can work. And they're also, because the Kenton Masters cobs are quite short panelled, they can work. Ideal do a saddle called Ideal Deal. They're really good on them too. And the XL Integra monoflap jump is the saddle I probably put on the connies most often. XL Integra mono jump. Sorry, Poppy, the subtitles tonight are amazing. Get your chicken to the salad. Should have been get your saddle fitter to check it. Subtitles are hilarious. They once changed something I said to something very rude, and I didn't say something rude. Ooh! Another girthing question, please. In your opinion, which are better, leather or neoprene? Thank you. Hi, Suzanne. So number one, the worst thing in the world, I think, is a cheap leather girth. So we're going to pretend that when you say leather girth, we're going to dismiss the cheap ones. I see a lot of people treat their horse to a leather girth, and so they go for a particular brand that makes them, and they're probably like 30-40 pounds, which doesn't sound cheap, but for leather girth it's quite cheap, and they're really narrow. So for me, it's not the material that they're made out of, it's the how they work as a girth. So the cheap leather ones tend to be very narrow. Avoid them like the plague. Throw it in the bin. Neoprene, some horses can react to neoprene. Some horses love the neoprene. So there's a girth called Professional Choice. Have you heard the Professional Choice girths? They do neoprene lined ones, and oh my god, they're brilliant on a lot of horses. They're really good. Shires do a copy of them as well. They're really, really, really good. But then equally, a really good leather girth is probably slightly nicer because it's a natural material. It breathes a little bit better, and both of them are good because they've got a little bit of grip to them. So you don't want something that sticks to your horse. If you think of a really good soft leather, so not these cheap horrible leathers, think of a really good soft leather, they have a bit of grip to them, and when they warm up and they get a little bit sweaty, they'll help not stick, but they just give that, they aid that little bit of extra grip against the horse's body. And the same with the neoprene. So in an ideal world, if money was no object, a really nice leather girth, but lots of the neoprene ones aren't bad at all. And as long as, presuming that your horse doesn't react to neoprene, because some do. Sharon, can you also tell us about times where you see riders and their own position as a thing that affects... this is really awkward. When you see riders and it's their own position as a thing that affects saddle fitting and how you deal with this. Well, one of the things I see a lot of, and I have to be rude because it's the only way to say it, is I see people that hump the pommel of their saddle a lot. And they ring up like, oh, my saddle's moving forward. And you go out and they're basically shagging the front of their saddle. And you think, well, no wonder it's moving forward. You're humping it forward. There's people that insist on doing sitting trots when they shouldn't be doing sitting trot. The horse isn't strong enough. They're not balanced enough. They do sitting trot because they think it makes them look, professional. I don't know why. And they hump it forward in that way. You often also see saddles move more. So if you've got quite an unbalanced rider who, when they rise in trot, sort of fling themselves forwards and up and down, they can sort of take the saddle up with them as well. So sometimes, actually, yes, saddle fitting, you're right. It is riders that can affect the saddle fit. Some riders sit like in a really chair seat and they sit themselves right back in the saddle, and you look at it and you think, oh, that saddle doesn't fit the rider. You think, oh my gosh, she needs a saddle that puts her in a better position. But sometimes it is genuinely the rider's position, not the saddle's fault. So there's a lot of times, I've just seen laughing faces pop up on my thing. I'm not laughing at the rude words, disgraceful. So sometimes it is the rider. Sometimes one of the things that makes it very difficult for saddle fitting is a very tall rider. So if you've got a rider that's a bit too tall for their horse, for their saddle, a bit big. So say someone's a bit big in their saddle, plus they're very tall, you get this like pendulum effect. So if they move slightly off one way, it can really pull the saddle off more than than someone that was a little bit shorter. And when they're too big for the saddle, they take the saddle with them. Equally, like strong ponies, you've got these riders that lock their arms, their ponies pull them forward. Well, if the rider's locked and the pony's pulling forward, where's the saddle going to go? It's going to go forward. But all of these things, people bring up like, my saddle's moving forward, my saddle's foot going to the side. Do you think, well, sometimes there's more than just the saddle that is the issue. But, the rider plays a part, the horse plays a part, together everything plays a part. Not saying that all saddle fitting issues are the rider's fault. Obviously, a lot of times it's the saddle's fault. Bum, ba, bum. Oh, hang on. More. Wow. Nikki Horton. I wear Crocs. I feel like this is some kind of a confessional show now. If anyone else wears Crocs, please don't tell me, because I hate Crocs. My husband wears Crocs with socks. Just putting that one out there. Angela Carter, my daughter got a VIP pad for her pony. What's the best way to put it on? As being sticky, it doesn't move if you put it in the wrong place. Is it just trial and error? I'm used to putting saddle up a horse's neck and sliding it down into its natural position, and I find it hard to make sure it's right if I have a saddle cloth under it or without one, if that makes sense. So number one, position your VIP pad should be between your saddle cloth and your saddle, and the same goes for all those gel pads. In fact, all the like half pad things, really. You always want to have a cotton numner, really, ideally, against your horse's back. So a lot of the manufacturers of the gel pads will say you can put them direct on the horse's back. VIP probably also say the same, and they're more than welcome to come and tell me that I'm wrong in this. But I personally think that you shouldn't put gel directly on a horse's back. So always put it on top of your saddle cloth, because again, like we're talking about the girths earlier, you want that. Sometimes you want there to be a little bit of grip, but you do not want things to stick. Because can you imagine like being hairy and having something stuck to you, and it would move your hair around and it would agitate the hair follicles, and it just wouldn't be nice. And you don't want to stick things. You don't want to stick your saddle to the horse's back, really. A lot of people think you do. A lot of people think, well, I want my saddle to stick to my horse's back and not move ever. But like, your horse's back is fluid, it moves. Your saddle is a fixed object. If you stick a fixed object to a fluid object, what do you do to that fluid object? You make it fixed, and we don't want that. So I think you want to put that on top of the saddle cloth. So in terms of positioning, once it's on top of the saddle cloth and the saddle is on, that's when you're going to get it into position. I would stick it to the bottom of your saddle, put your numner on, hoik it into position, do your little tabs up. If you've got a saddle cloth that's got the little like D-ring tabs, they're much better. They hold them like together a little bit better. And then put it on your horse's back and shugle it back until it finds its natural place. Angela Carter, and we have a Connie. See, my saddle fitter said it was easy. Your saddle fitter, your Connie's easy, or your saddle fitter's even better than me. My daughter isn't as short from my daughter isn't as short from heel to knee and hip problems that make her toes point out, and deep seats she wouldn't fit in. She's been fitted with a Jeffries Falcon. Yeah, so those little Jeffries saddles are quite nice on the Connie types. Your Connie probably hasn't got a completely flat back, so you're very lucky. Caroline Gill, can't wait to see your new Connemara saddle. Me neither. The one our first one that's coming out, which is going to be for my daughter's pony horse, she's got stingray leather on the back, obviously. Ellie Hodgson, how important do you think getting a bridle fitted is? I'm due to have a bit fitted and wondering if I should get a bridle at the same time. My cob is just in a pretty cheap, not anatomical bridle at the moment. Check me out, no text speak, ATM at the moment. But very important. Not just saying that as I've done my bridle fitting course. It's very important. There's been so much research done about pressure on the horse's face and about all the facial nerves. And I'm not going to say I think it's as important as saddle fitting, because I think the pressure is different. It's a different sort of pressure and a different sort of weight, but it still is very important. Again, if you go for Centaur Biomechanics, bridle fitting or something, and you can look at some of their amazing research they've done. William Micklem, so he started off this trend, I think, really, with a Micklem bridle. So everyone thinks of Micklem bridles, you know, we all know about them, don't we? They sit a bit differently. Why do they sit a bit differently? It's because of all the facial nerves. And there's so much research to show that it does make a huge difference. And I can even think personally, as an example, my son's our pony. He had a little pony that's quite sensitive, and we put him from a very standard normal, I can't remember what he was in, this normal bridle, into a collegiate comfy tech. Have you seen them? It was very cut back behind his ears. It was very padded, and the nosebands are sat completely differently on his face. Everything sat much more clear. It was like his cheekbones and everything like that. And he instantly was a much happier chap. So I do think that bridle fitting is very, very important. And if your bit fitter that's coming out is also a bridle fitter, then get her to check your bridle and maybe even recommend you a nice anatomical one. And not all, like I've just said that the collegiate one fitted my son's pony really nicely. It did fit him beautifully. I got one for my horse, didn't fit at all. So it's all to do with like where their ears are. Like there's no point in having an anatomical bridle with a cut back bit that doesn't cut back behind the ears. It cuts back in the wrong place. So yes, very important. Not as important as a saddle Angela Carter. We had an ideal deal which fitted the Connie, but not my daughter. It's now up for sale. Anyone looking for an ideal deal? Angela Carter's got one for sale. They do tend to fit the Connies really nicely. They're quite simple saddles. They're quite small. There's not a lot of leather used for them, but they are nice. Mia Hill, if my base GP saddle lifts a little at the back, is it because of the air panels, or do you think there's the wrong fit? Well, like I was saying a minute ago, a lot of people expect there to be zero movement in their saddle at all, ever. But sometimes, we fit a saddle to a horse, and most of the time it's backs like this and the saddle fits. But sometimes you get horses who, for example, buck and plunge and they round their back up, and then the saddle isn't going to fit the same, or they really bascule over a fence, and sometimes you get a little bit of lift at the back. And equally, in some saddles, there is some movement at the back, and people will often go, oh my gosh, the saddle's lifting at the back. But it's just a normal amount of movement. Other times people will say the saddle's lifting at the back, and it is lifting at the back. So if yours is lifting at the back, then yes, it's probably a fitting issue. So air in the panels, people think makes it more bouncy, but it doesn't really make it lift more. There's a little bit more bedoink, bedoink, I would say, not hugely, but it shouldn't make it lift more. If you've got a base GP saddle, but it's one of the newer ones, it might need a different gullet change. It might need the little shims putting into the little risers putting into the tree. It might need changing a bit, but they're very adjustable. I've literally just done a video that's going to be going up in a few days about Bates saddles, where I interviewed the lady from Bates. Angela Carter, with leather girths, my saddler made me an Atherstone one for £30, but it was a few years ago. That would have been quite a few years ago. I keep losing the thread. Sorry if I've missed anyone out. Oh, I can see lots of posts coming up about Crocs and socks. Have you tried the Total Saddle Fit girths? Right, let's Google one of these so I can show you these. I think we might have spoken about one of these on the Total Saddle Fit girth. So these are the ones that have got a little funny bit of elastic on them. Bear with. It's taking a while to load. Can't I see a photo of them anywhere? You'd think that they'd have a photo on their website of them. Bear with. No, they don't really. I'll talk you through them instead. Total Saddle Fit girths. So they are, I think they do a few different types, but they're kind of, they call themselves like shoulder relief, which is been going on for a bazillion years. Fairfax have done them for ages, but I think long before then, Barnsby did them many years ago. Jaguar have done them for a really long time. Albion have done them for quite a long time. So there's that kind of that banana shaped girth that means that the girth can sit on the sternum, and it kind of comes back and allows the saddle to sit back behind the shoulder. I think the ones that have got the elastic on the sternum, so we were talking earlier on about elastic on both sides, so either have elastic both sides or elastic in the middle, because then it's even. On the sternum kind of makes sense to me, especially in that like V shape that it's in, because when you think of how it moves, that's the sort of movement you're going to get in the sternum. Kind of makes sense to me. And again, in conjunction with your saddle fitter and what your horse says. So you said here your thoroughbred seems to love it, Nikki, even though you confessed earlier to wearing Crocs, so not sure I rely on your taste. But your thoroughbred seems to love it. So if your thoroughbred loves it, then that's telling you a lot. Oh, here we go. Caroline Gill, I wear Crocs too. Catherine Foster, Crocs and socks, no. Whoop, whoop. What are the main benefits of the Fairfax Performance Panel? Let's have a look at this for you. Fairfax Performance Panel. So who's seen these panels on the Fairfax? Let's see if I can find a photo, because I bet none of them actually have photos. Oh, here we go. We can sort of see it on this picture here. Right, let me share this. Can you see? So can you see that on these Fairfax saddles, underneath, if you just flip it upside down, the panel itself is kind of like split in two. So the bottom Oh no. I wonder if I can zoom in. The bottom, so basically, like the panel that's like directly underneath the seat touches the horse's back is attached to the tree, and then the rest of the panels are like attached to the flap. So it means that it means basically that the flap isn't restricting. The flap isn't attached to everything that sort of restricts. The flap itself has these things attached to so that they don't kind of collapse into the horse, but they're not attached to the tree in the same way. So the reasoning behind it is, and again, it's all to do with like shoulder movement, is that the scapula then can move. So if that saddle, this is all backwards, if that saddle there was sitting on a scapula, oh my God, that way, so the scapula did that, it's going to go underneath the kind of, it's almost like a fake panel. So the actual panel that's on directly underneath the seat is attached to this panel, to the tree, and it sits on the horse's back. The rest kind of moves and flexes back, which means in theory the scapula can swing underneath it more easily. What are the benefits? They would say that the benefits are that the horse's scapula can swing underneath it better, increasing their performance, hence the performance panel. Some horses love them, some horses don't love them. Some riders love them, some don't. It's the same with everything. Yeah. Best thing to do is to ask a Fairfax saddle fitter to bring you some out and see if your horse enjoys them or not, and if you enjoy them. Have you seen the quantum bridles? Great idea, pretty pricey. Yes, so on the saddle bridle fitting thing we did the other day, they had quantum bridles. But now it's not, I mean, like we think of quantum bridles and they're like, oh, they're a bit odd. They sit back. See if we can find one. Can we see these? Can we see how they sit right? Oh, they can't see, can you? Because I haven't put it up there. Bear with. They sit like the cheek pieces go right down low. So they sit like way away from all the nerves, facial nerves. The headpieces sit differently. They also have like little lumps under them that pull them, like hold everything away. They are great idea. Pretty pricey. Yeah, pretty bang on there. Again, like, but what is price? You know, if you put that on your horse and your horse goes from being a seaside donkey to a Grand Prix dressage horse, worth every penny. It depends on the difference it makes. Back in the old days, my saddle fitter at the time said you should never have air-filled saddles on a horse larger than a medium due to the rock and roll created. Had this changed and evolved now? I've seen some very wide horses fitted with air-filled saddles. Yes, so air-filled saddles have changed massively, uncountably massively. They are very, very different. And there's also different types of air-filled saddles. So some air-filled saddles are, you know, you imagine a panel's that deep. Some air-filled saddles are air-filled. Others have a little air pocket with foam in it, so still classed as an air one. Some have big airbags that you can inflate, not inflate. Other ones have sealed ones. Also, air-filled saddles were probably originally the realm of Wintec Bates, and they very long time ago were renowned for having a very banana-shaped tree, so they did rock on the flatter-backed types and the broader types. But now they've got so many different tree models that doesn't happen the same. The trees are completely different. So don't dismiss air-filled saddles anymore. I'm still like team flocking, whoop whoop, because I'm a saddle fitter and we love flocking. But the air saddles now, certainly the Care ones, which are the sealed airbags, but also the flare ones, the ones you can pump up, have come on, leaps, like not even leaps and bounds, like really big leaps and bounds. Yeah, you know what I mean. Crocs are super comfy and I wear them all the time. The worst thing is this lady here, Sarah Rodwell, there, naming shame, she's my friend. She wears Crocs. Nikki Horton, have you ever found some horses are really anti the Care panels? Yes, I have. Some horses don't like air. Some horses prefer air. Some horses hate foam. Others don't mind it. It's really personal taste. And I think it's not, some of it's down to the fitting, obviously, but some of it is just who they are. I know, for example, that I don't like Crocs. Lots of you apparently do. It's about what you like and what you don't like. And horses are, obviously we're paid to go and saddle fit, but horses are the experts in this. And if a horse tells you doesn't like an airfall saddle, then he probably doesn't like an airfall saddle. They would feel different. They deaden the impact and they deaden the pressure differently than a flocked one. I'm not saying they're better or worse, but they are different. Why is it important, Ellen Betts, why is it important to have nice wide panels on cobs and equally not on horses with more shape to their backs? I have a cob who's 3x wide with a broad flat back. He's having a custom made saddle. It's very, well, basically the reason that we have saddles is to distribute our weight over as big an area as we can while still fitting the horse and the rider. And cobs with very flat backs tend to have very flat, wide ribs. So we want to distribute that weight over those wide ribs. And we also, when you flip up a cob saddle upside down, the majority of cobs are really broad for their spinous processes. So there's bits of bone that you can feel along the top of their back. Happen to have this here. These little bits of bone here. They're also quite wide through there. So we have to have a really good channel down the middle of our saddle to sit either side of that. So if we're sitting, so if you've got like, I'm going to draw you a picture. No, I'm not. I'm going to do it with my hands. I'm not very good at drawing. So if you've got their spine here, and then you are sitting the panel quite far, as I say, their spine's quite wide. So you're having to sit the panel a little bit wider there. Then you then need to have fairly wide panels, because otherwise the whole thing is just going to collapse in, because otherwise you've got like no structure to the saddle. So you want to use up the width of their ribs because you can. You want them to be nice and flat and soft, because most of these horses have enough of their own padding. They don't need any extra padding in the saddle. So nice, softly flocked usually, and wide weight bearing panels, and also often quite short, because they often tend to be very short back, these types. So because you're going short panels, because they've got short ribs, we're taking the weight that way instead. We can't take it lengthways, so we end up taking it widthways if we can. And 3x wide is pretty wide. I hope you've got flexible hips. Fiona, I have an Akeep dressage saddle. I've had it for years and it's been used on a few different horses. All horses were variable in shape, size and width. Yeah, saddle fitters has always given the all clear to use it, even when the horse is completely different size to previous. How can this be? Well, the chances of it fitting all of the horses are slim. The Akeep saddles fall under the umbrella of like the European saddles, often foam panelled rather than flocked, and are often fitted with pads instead of flocking, stuff like that. They can be a bit adjustable. Perhaps you've just been lucky. Awkward. Yeah, it depends, because like sometimes you think your horses are very different shapes, but actually they're not that different shapes. So perhaps your horses haven't been in such different shapes after all, or you've just been very lucky. But no, you're right. If they are very different shapes in terms of size, shape and width, then in theory, one of the things that we fit on a horse is the width and then the shape. So if the widths are different, the same width saddle can't fit all the same horses, unless they really padded it out for the narrower ones. Ellen Betts, what do you think about foam panels? No, I prefer flocked panels, and I prefer flocked, my favourite. Flocked, and then air, then foam probably. Foam, you can't adjust them. Modern foam is much better, but old foam used to disintegrate a little bit. There's just no feel there, I don't think. They're very popular in like the show jumping world, where they're putting from one horse to another because they're not bedding into that horse. But then you'll also notice there are the people that put the half pads on underneath and the shims and things like that, because they're not so adjustable. I much prefer a flock saddle. Last one, Sharon, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Very much appreciated. No problem whatsoever. I've been chit-chatting for an hour. So if no one else has got any more questions, then I'm done. It's 9 o'clock. I've had my dinner early today. You'll be pleased to hear. I had a barbecue. It was delicious. Yeah, I think I've done all the questions. If anyone's got anything else, quickly shout now, or forever hold your peace until next month. Hang on, bear with. I feel the need to get my salad checked again now. Do you cover northeast links? No, what's that? Never eat shredded wheat. No, I probably don't. I cover about halfway up into links. Not sure who's up there. What's her face? Forgotten her name. Lorna Tack Boss cover your area. I don't know. Go on the SMS website, see who your qualified ones are. In that case, when are you coming to Devon? Have you got ice cream? Scones? Maybe? No. Too far for me, I'm afraid. Does Lisa Theron cover Devon? She's good. Anyway, lovely to speak to you all. If you think of any more questions before next month, then pop me out a message or something like that. And I probably won't reply because I'm too busy. But I will put this next live will be coming up on the last Friday of next month. And I'll put like a little reminder thing on Facebook, both Facebook pages and also on YouTube. And when that comes up, pop your questions on there. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it on a theme or not next month, but if any of you have got any ideas for a theme, then with Thomas's one's turned up. If any of you have got any ideas for a theme, then give me a shout if there's anything particularly you want to talk about. If not, I might do a general one, or I might think of a theme myself. It's been super, super duper talking to you all. One more question. Nikki Horton, I'm still waiting on you to come visit me here. She's in like Florida, somewhere really hot in America. Yeah, maybe get a suntan. Anyway, it's been super lovely speaking to all of you, and I hope you're all having a lovely bank holiday weekend, and take care. Stay safe. Lots and lots and lots of love.